Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into it. This is the Volquest podcast. I'm Eric Kane with Austin Price, Grant Ramey, and Brent Hubbs. Appreciate you guys for being here. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe to us on Volquest on the YouTube channel so that we can get this video out in front of more and more Tennessee fans. And, of course, with it being midway through fall camp, no better time to join us over at the general quarters at volquest.com right now. Couldn't do this coverage without our friends Exterior Home Solution. Again, at the time of this recording, storms are continuing to roll in. They've felt like they've been here for weeks upon end, Brent Hubbs. But anybody that needs repairs to their home or just an upgrade, whatever that may be, Exterior Home Solutions can make that possible for them.
Yeah, no doubt. Friend of the community. And if you're in a time of need, if you've had a tree fall on your house or you've got roof damage from storms or whatever, they can come out and certainly look at things and get you fixed and get you squared away to prevent any kind of further damage that you've had. Working obviously with insurance companies throughout the area and all those things. But in addition to those things, if you're looking for a new porch or windows or siding or a new fencing, different things that you're looking for in your house, our friends at Exterior Home Solutions should be the first call you make. They will take great care of you as they do a terrific job, and they're a great friend of the community as well. Huge Tennessee fans, by the way. Huge.
And today, you get a free estimate if you give them a call at 865-524-5888. That's 865-524-5888. Or as always, visit them online, exteriorhomesolutions.com. All right, so we're, kind of approaching midway point through fall camp. Tennessee and Virginia will kick off in a matter of a couple weeks on September the 2nd. I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of go through position by position and just kind of give an update on where we are in fall camp, kind of the pros, the cons, worry, concern, strength, whatever the case that may be. So let's start with the quarterbacks. And again, we get to see just a little bit of practice. We don't get to see the scrimmages. But Austin Price, it looks like every time we're out there, and from hearing what Josh Heupel had to say about his quarterbacks post-scrimmage number 1, off to a good start, Joe Milton looks good in practice.
Yeah, been very, very solid. Has he been perfect? No, but no quarterback's going to be. Just steady improvement. He improved from year 1 to being the backup last year, and then, of course, being the starter the last couple of games. I think he's improved more this year. Again, I do think that the biggest thing for Joe is, you're obviously your highs are going to be really high with him. Not have the lows be so low? Can you, instead of, Hubbs knows this all the time. How many 3.5 were there against Clemson?
6 or 7.
Yeah. So can you make that 3, 4? Like you're not going to, be perfect, but at the same time, like, can you make your number of miscues or misfires smaller? And I think if he does that, then I think that this is a Tennessee offense that will still be good. I've said the whole time, I thought Tennessee's offense would take a fraction of a step back just because of what you lost and the steady Eddie, players you had last year. But I think Tennessee's defense takes a huge step forward, and so thus, you can have just as much success. I just think ultimately this is going to be one of those things where Joe, when he has those big high plays, it's going to be really, really, really like, whoa, that was unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like, I think that Joe is that guy.
I think, Grant, the biggest question I've got with Joe is, can he put – it's a game of errors, okay? You're not going to play perfect, particularly when the coaching staff is telling you to rip it, don't be afraid to take chances, those types of things. How does Joe put a bad play behind him to where he can overcome second and long if first down was a bad play, as opposed to compounding a bad first down play into a bad second down play, and then you do have one of those 3 and outs? I think that's Joe's admitted that's been a challenge for him in his career, and I think that's the question that you have with Joe, piggybacking off what Austin said.
Was it Joey Halsey on Media Day talking about Joe not being so hard on himself? Do I have that right in my head, that he was kind of focusing on kind of why the mistake happening instead of kind of what made the mistake happen and how to correct it and stuff like that? Like, yeah, to Austin's point, he's got to be able to move on from those moments. The unfortunate thing for us is we've got, a little under 3 weeks until kickoff, and we're really not going to see anything with our own eyes that proves that Joe can do this or be the guy. Like, we're going to see him hand it off for 10 minutes. We're going to see him throw routes on air for 10 minutes. And in a couple weeks, even that's going to get eliminated, and they're going to go into regular season mode. So that's the thing for us, is everybody's got questions, and people ask us questions about what it looks like, and you can talk to people and all that stuff, but we're not going to see it with our own eyes until, 11 a.m. Eastern time or Central time in Nashville on September 2nd against Virginia. So there's going to be a lot of questions, like there has been since the Orange Bowl ended, and we're not really going to have any answers until we see it with our own eyes, really.
Oh, I mean, two weeks. I mean, it's literally, this is the last week. Like,
That's true.
Practice, this weekend, and that's it, buddy. Like, it's off. And so, but you're right. I mean, if you're doing your due diligence, I mean, there's enough people to talk to, and several of them are, I would call them Eeyores. So, like, they're going to be for the downside of things anyway. So, like, if they're saying Joe's performing well, then they're not. They're probably performing pretty well. So, for my liking, again, I think he's continued to steadily improve. But Grant's right. Until you get out there, you don't know. It's kind of like the offensive line. We've all talked about. There's some worry there. There's some worry from everybody over there about just left guard, right tackle, all that. But, the scheme sets up a certain way to it may not be as glaring as if you just kind of got in two tights and got north-south and, tried to run downhill on everybody.
Getting back to the quarterbacks, because we're going to dive in the offensive line and all the other positions in a second. But one more final thing on the quarterbacks. Eric, I think the one thing that stands out to me about Joe a little bit is it doesn't feel like the personality and all of that is kind of forced or as much as a flamboyant show as it was, particularly that first year. You know what I mean? On the practice field, even in the brief time that we're there, there's a lot more Joe trying to help his teammates, coach them, instruct them, and a little less of the flair that we saw. I don't know that that's necessarily a big deal, but I think he's got a little bit more of a business-minded approach to things this fall camp than maybe what we saw that first year, but before he got ready to go out and play that season opener as a starter.
I just think he's comfortable, right? And he's a guy that this is now his third year in the system. He's learned, as Austin pointed out, he's learned a little bit every single year. He's gotten better a little bit every single year. He learned from Hendon Hooker the last 2 years. I think he's comfortable in his own skin right now. And you're right, you do see him pulling aside of some receivers and kind of going over some matchups. A lot of these young receivers, he's coaching up Nico at all the time, during practice while we're out there. So I think it's a guy that's comfortable in himself. He's competitive, and also he's just ready to go out there and let it be his time. And we'll see exactly what that looks like. Real quick, before we move on from the quarterbacks, though, a quick Nico update. It's never going to be perfect, continuing to get more and more involved in the offense, his grasp of the offense. Austin, while we're out there, again, he looks pretty decent. Josh Heupel had a lot of good things to say about him after the post-scrimmage. What have you heard about Nico Iamaleava so far in fall camp?
One quick thing before we go to Nico. I will say, what are we saying during the 2-minute drill after the game in Nashville and in the post-game pod about how crisp everything looks? You remember that first game Joe had 2 years ago, man? I mean, Tennessee won rather easily, but it was sloppy. I mean, like they had to hit some late, a couple late touchdown bombs. They were sloppy. How much more crisp do they look 2 years in with some different personnel? That's something I'm looking for. As for Nico, again, super talented, a guy that has made some freshman mistakes in fall camp, as you would expect, but flashes big. And Hubs, when he flashes, I think it leaves everybody going, man, the future's bright.
Yeah, I think the scrimmage is a little bit of a tough judgment for him because he didn't have a lot of weapons to throw with. Because the twos were working with Joe as the ones, because the ones were on the side watching. So I mean, and Nico wasn't throwing to a great core of receivers who were going against. I mean, he was throwing to walk-on receivers who were going against the Ricky Gibsons and the Jordan Matthews and those guys who you think are your real future in the secondary. I'm not knocking on the walk-on receivers, but it's just a different level there. The one thing I keep hearing about Nico from people is he's better after we're gone. Not because, Grant, he's afraid of the media or bothered by the media, but the more clutter that you get out there, the more, quote, real football it is and less routes versus air and that type of thing, the better Nico seems to perform. Now, we haven't seen that, but that's kind of the vibe that you're getting, is that he was better in the scrimmage than he's been in some practices leading up to the scrimmage.
I mean, what was the talk in bowl practices and spring practice that it was kind of a struggle to adjust to this pace, which I think it would be for any quarterback coming into the system and trying to play as fast as Josh Heupel wants to play. But to hear Josh on what day was that, Thursday after the scrimmage, say he doesn't make the same mistake twice as a freshman, and a guy that has made that progress from bowl practice to spring practice to fall practice, and it seems like he's progressing pretty quickly because, like what Hubs is talking about, when there's more people on the field, when it's more real football, it's faster football in Josh Heupel's offense. And if he's not making the same mistake twice and he's moving the offense at the speed he wants to, and he's making plays with the walk-on receivers like Hubs talked about, It seems like he's progressing in the right way. And it's also, I think it's pretty rare to have a guy that it doesn't seem like he has much of a ego to him. I mean, 5-star number 1 overall player in the country, and he's fine sitting behind Joe and working with Joe. And Joe's coaching him up after even those handoff reps that we see early in practice. So it's a really fun dynamic to watch. I think UT is really fortunate to have it.
Let's talk about those weapons. The wide receiver position, I think, can be, and it's wild to even say this because you lost the Blitnikoff Award winner. You lost a 1,000-yard receiver a couple years ago in Cedric Tillman. I think the wide receiver position could be a huge strength for Tennessee. Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Ramel Keaton. All those guys, have missed, a practice here or there. They didn't scrimmage on Thursday, but Grant, we'll go right back to you. Those wide receivers are going to be a strength for Tennessee. They're all a little bit different, and it looks like those guys are coming along, as well as Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod, a couple of promising sophomores that you've heard a lot of good things about.
I think with Heupel, what Heupel has that I don't think a lot of Tennessee coaches has had in a while is the benefit of the doubt. Like, you got any questions, you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, they're going to produce. I mean, he had Javonte Payton running wide open in year 1 with, whatever 65 scholarship guys on roster that he talks about all the time. Like Cedric Tillman, he hadn't done a ton before Josh got here. Look what he did in that first year. Jalen Hyatt hadn't done a ton before Josh got here. Look what he did last year. The crazy numbers he put up. And then you bring in Dante Thornton, a guy that Halsey calls freakish with his ability to, the speed and the size that he has. Squirrel, what we've seen from Joe and Squirrel late in games last year. I mean, I think it is weird to say you feel really good about the wide receiver position given what you've lost in Cedric and Jalen, but you feel really good about the wide receiver position because you saw some of it from Ramel Keaton last year. You saw some of it from Brew McCoy. And now you plug in these other guys and you plug in a guy like Joe that can throw the ball the way he can. And you have that benefit of the doubt with the head coach and the offense. It looks like it's going to be another set of receivers that can put up big numbers because that's just what they've always done.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, and here goes Austin's going to laugh because this is Hubs' Eeyore moment, right?
You guys know Hubs worked at a funeral home, so fitting.
I want to see Dante Thornton in a game.
Yeah,
and not because I think Dante Thornton is not ready or is not talented enough or any of those types of things. I just get a little bit hesitant when all this gushing talk about freak athlete and all these things, and he hasn't done it really on any kind of consistent basis, AP. I mean, he flashed with some deep – he was kind of the Javonte Payton at Oregon, right? I mean, that was kind of it. It was kind of throw him a deep ball, and that's sort of his stat line at Oregon. So I think he has all the tools and talent in the world. I think because we don't get to see how it translates against physical contact and against 11-on-11 stuff and game action. I want to see that one a little more. I have total belief that he's going to be a good player. I just don't know that he's going to be the plug-and-play Jalen Hyatt because he's a, quote, freak like some people have suggested. Does that make sense? Does that make me Mr. Negative, AP?
No, I don't think so because, I mean, ultimately, everybody here has got fallen into, man, he looks pretty. And
right.
You're hearing him making enough plays in practice back in the, when he actually went through spring practice before he kind of was held out with the hamstring stuff. Then in fall camp that you're like, okay, let's not get out ahead of ourselves because, let's see him put together a game or two. And there's no doubt the talent's there. Again, if he is who they think he is, he's going to be in the NFL draft come April because that means he's going to really be a key asset for this team and will likely put up big numbers. But yeah, I mean, I do think you want to kind of just see it. Just see some consistency, stay healthy, have the hamstring not flare up, stay on the field. Because I do think if he stays on the field, he's going to make plays. But the easy prediction for all these receivers is either to go with Ramel Keaton, who's got an incredible rapport with Joe, and or Brew McCoy, same type thing. But we all know what happens in the slot in this offense, which is why there is such excitement for Squirrel White, for Dante Thornton, just like, that we saw out of Velus Jones and Jalen Hyatt. So, again, I don't think that's an Eeyore moment from you at all. I think that's a very valid point. Now, again, if he goes and has 2 good games and you're still saying this stuff, that's the Eeyore moment.
And what I'm intrigued about too is, again, we've seen this Heupel offense for 2 years, and they can say all that they want, but because of the tempo, you're playing 3 wide receivers the most of the time. We talk about this all the time. You have to have that tight end out there. But I do believe those 4 wide receivers, Squirrel, Dante, Ramel, and Brew McCoy, are all going to play. Football has a way of working itself out in terms of snap count. Now, is it as simple as somebody gets hurt and then you move some things around? Dante Thornton's got versatility. You can bump to the outside, maybe. Or if all's healthy, maybe you get a breather this series. You get a breather this series. It's going to work itself out.
Remember, none of those 4 that you just named went through the scrimmage on Thursday.
Yeah.
I asked Josh Heupel that on the Nation Sunday night. How important is it to get those 4 back for scrimmage number 2? Now, he was right to point out, hey, we have them out there when we do 11-on-11 work, during regular practice. So because they scrimmage during regular practice days. But yeah, I think it's important to get at least a few of them back heading into this thing. I mean, what Hub said about Dante Thornton, you could say about Joe, you could say about the offensive line. You need a couple of games to kind of start to judge these things. I get there's a lot of promise and a lot of flash, but you still have to kind of see it. Look at Tennessee's team last year against Pittsburgh. Did you ever see them a month later beating LSU at LSU? That was actually just a few weeks later, beating Alabama at home with Bryce Young. I mean, did anybody see that? Because I can promise you, when I left Pittsburgh, I didn't see that.
You just get better. I mean, good football teams find a way to get better every single week, and that's what Tennessee did. But to your point, no, I don't think anybody saw that. I mean, those are some big-time wins.
Well, and I think one of the final things on the receivers here, one of the positives there is the development of Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Because a year ago, Grant, they played 3 guys because they had 3 guys who they believed that could line up and play. They didn't have a whole lot of other options. They clearly have – 4 right now they feel comfortable with. But the extra work that Nimrod and Caleb Webb have gotten in the scrimmage stuff, which is why I don't think those big 4 are going to scrimmage a whole lot on Wednesday, maybe a little bit, but not much, is continuing to build some depth in case they have a nagging injury or they want to play more people. I think that is an underlying positive of fall camp that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, because I do think that's allowing them to for those young guys to kind of get themselves more acclimated and comfortable in this offense.
And while I agree with that, don't you think, and maybe not for Ramel or Brew, but don't you think Dante Thornton needs to work Wednesday? He's probably the one guy that I look and go, yeah, he needs to go. Maybe the other guys can set out, but I feel like Dante needs to go Wednesday.
Yeah,
I think with Chaz, I think with those guys, I think it's not just depth. It's competitive depth. And I don't think Tennessee's had that in 2 years under Josh Heupel. I don't know how many receivers are going to play. I don't know how many they're going to need to play. They might find their 3 guys and roll with, and that's that. And I don't know who those guys will be and whatever. But to have options and to have good options, not just bodies to throw out there, but to have competitive depth is, I think, something Tennessee has not seen in 2 years. And I think with other position groups as well. Maybe you take step forwards with other position groups where you take step back with some of them. So I think competitive depth is a big difference than just depth. And I think it's the first time Tennessee's starting to have that, or starting to look like they have that, at least under Josh Heupel.
Yeah, and Austin, I would agree with you. I think out of those 4, Dante Thornton needs to work more than anybody else. And I would probably put Squirrel White second because he has missed some time in fall camp or been limited. So I agree. I don't think that those guys need to be in street clothes and Crocs on the sideline. I do think they'll be smart and mindful with them. But at the same time, too, I don't think that they're going to just wear those guys out in this second scrimmage.
Hubs, you're showing your age, man. Kids don't wear Crocs. They wear slides.
Oh, well, at my house, they wear Crocs. So
my kids got Crocs. My first graders got Crocs. Crocs are back, baby.
We'll conclude the offensive side of the football here in a moment. But the last position group before we take a short breather I want to hit on is the running backs. And I don't think there's a lot to talk about here, Austin. Again, coming into the season, coming into camp, it's like, all right, you like it top to bottom. It's a deep group. It's a pretty experienced group. There's no Superman, but there's a lot of guys that can play. And I think we're all expecting Jalen Wright to take a step and maybe be that lead back in that group this year. But Wright's had a good camp. He had a really good run that they put on social media in that scrimmage where, he just looked really physical. That was good to see. Jabari Small, Josh Heupel was talking a lot about Jabari Small after the first scrimmage. Dylan Sampson, who has been limited a little bit, he's been out there working. You have Cam Seldon, of course, and you look at that room again, top to bottom. I feel like it's deep. It's one of the deeper rooms in the SEC. Might not be the most talented, but you feel good about that position at this point in camp.
Yeah, I mean, halfway through August, I think barring an injury, the first running back out there against Virginia is Jalen Wright. I mean, he has had a phenomenal offseason, had a great spring up before they kind of just shut him down. Has had a great summer, has continued that into fall camp. If anything, I think he is I want to call him Secretariat, boys. I think he's widening the gap between he and the rest. I mean, I think there's some real separation there between Jalen Wright and the other backs in that room. And so, I think he's continued to improve. And really, you go back, he didn't play his senior year. His junior year, he was sharing carries. His sophomore year, he was sharing carries. Before that, he didn't play. He just not played a ton of football. And so to see him kind of go boom, all of a sudden it just light come on and it started to click is a good sign. And it just shows that, sometimes it takes, a player a little while to kind of get going and find their footing. He's showcasing different dynamics based on my talks with people than he's shown in his first few years here. And this is a Jalen Wright that I think saw his good friend Jalen Hyatt a year ago rise to stardom when focused, and I think Jalen Wright's very focused.
Yeah, all you got to do is read the quote from Josh Heupel or listen to the quote from Josh Heupel on The Nation, because the question was, about running backs and about Jalen Wright, and the next 40-second answer was Josh Heupel talking about Jalen Wright in a way he's never talked about Jalen Wright, and not just from a talent standpoint, but he referred to him his professional approach, business-like approach, carrying himself like a pro, speaks volumes to the maturity that he's seen out of Jalen Wright, because he would not have said that a year ago. Those are not phrases that would have been associated with Jalen Wright and Josh Heupel a year ago. Tells you the maturity that Jalen Wright has had in this program under Jerry Mack.
Again, like Austin said, you watch your best friend Jalen Hyatt, catch the jug machine after 5 touchdown game against Alabama. The way he goes to work, you see Ramel Keaton doing that now. I mean, Jalen Wright probably picked up a thing or two as well. So excited to see that group. We'll hit on the tight ends, the offensive line, and then we'll transition to defense. Here is the Volquest podcast continues. But I want to tell you about our friends, Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event, it shouldn't be a stressful process. And with Game Time, it's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing out over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you are going to have. Some of the things you can like about the Game Time app experience. All right, you got flash deals, last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. We're talking football, we're talking Tennessee, but there are concerts all the time in the Knoxville area. Again, there's theater downtown, whatever it is, you can find it on the Game Time app. Images for your seats, you can see them before. Lowest price guarantee. If the event is canceled, you have protection, job loss protection, and a whole lot more. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more at the Game Time app today. The Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find the tickets in the same section for a row or less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That is a really, really good deal there if you find some cheaper tickets. So right now, I encourage you to go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code VOLS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code VOLS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. That is Game Time. Download that app today. And as always, right here at the Volquest podcast, couldn't do it without our friends, Exterior Home Solutions.
Your roof, it's the most important protection against nature for your home or your business. That's why I trust the experts at Exterior Home Solutions.
As always, a big-time thank you to Exterior Home Solutions. They do incredible work here in East Tennessee. Big-time Tennessee fans. And if you need repairs to your home or literally just an upgrade on anything around your home, windows, siding, decking, porch, roofing, whatever it is, Exterior Home Solutions can help you out today. We went through nearly all the positions on the offense side of the football. Let's hit up tight ends. We'll do offensive line, and then we will shift to defense. Brent Hubbs, tight ends. You feel good about having Jacob Warren in there. He's been in college for a decade plus. He knows the system. He's like another coach on the field. That helps with a new, brand new tight ends coach. You like the progress of McCallan Castles. He's been getting a whole lot of work in practice and scrimmages. And you like the progress of Ethan Davis, who you have phrased might be the most important freshman to this football team because he's got to have to play.
Yeah, no doubt he's going to have to play. I think the biggest question with all three of those guys, even though Jacob Warren's played a lot of football, is what's their physicality when they're in tight, up against the tackle and the C area or whatever they call that in football, It's very comfortable for Castles and for Davis Grant to be split out wide. They're big receivers. That's how they play. Now you're asking them to block. They're willing blockers, but how effective are they going to be, not only in the run game, but when they're also asked to slide in and help with some protection as well? Where are those guys going to be? That's the transition that you're going to have to see out of McCallan Castles and Ethan Davis, two guys who have not done a whole lot of that in their football careers.
Yeah, I think they looked the part 100%. I think you're really happy to have Jacob Warren back, looking back and just kind of what this room looks like now. I mean, McCallan Castles looks the part. I mean, he put on 15, 20 pounds since whenever he arrived here. And you look at what he did at UC Davis and you just feel good about kind of what his potential is, but it's, again, almost like quarterbacks. You got to see it to believe it, and we haven't seen anything on the field. So you like what those guys bring, and I like what Ethan Davis did in the spring and what we saw in the orange and white game before he got hurt and the way he's bounced back from that. And it feels like the present and the future of the position is bright. We just need to see it on the field.
We look at the offensive line now, Austin Price, and obviously you came into camp with a couple big-time questions. With Cooper Mays being sidelined here for the next couple weeks, that has another question added into this. You have veterans like, Ollie Lane, who has versatility, who's kind of going with the centers right now. Leaves a left guard position that he was very much in with, but that's still a big-time question. Gerald Mincy was pretty much getting exclusive work on the left side with the twos. He's been getting more and more work on the right side, along with Jeremiah Crawford at right tackle, John Campbell at left tackle. Still some questions. Versatility is going to help Tennessee, but kind of where are we midway through fall camp on the offensive line?
Well, I think the biggest question is left guard for me. I think, you've got, some tackles that have played. I'm not nearly as worried about that right tackle spot as I am left guard. I think that left guard spot's it's a glaring weakness as of right now until proven otherwise. And, is that Andre Carrick? Is it Ollie Lane if Cooper's back? Is it Addison Nichols, who's gotten more and more work at left guard? Is it Jackson Lampley? Who is it? They need somebody to step up. Again, I think this offensive line, if they stay relatively healthy, and again, that's a big if because it's football, has still a chance because of the scheme to be okay. I think that they are an injury or two away from being, I think they've got to stay healthy at the tackle spots, and they've got to find some serviceable guards. And then, of course, we're all talking about, the center position. Cooper's going to be back, sooner rather than later. I mean, he may miss the first game, but I think he's back, in somewhat in early September. And, as long as he can stay healthy, Tennessee will be fine there. But, you start, you have a player or two go down here or there, and the whole thing really could be a house of horrors, in my opinion.
Well, I think you could have said the same thing for last year. I think you can say that the same thing about every year for that position. But you're right. I mean, they don't have a ton of depth there. We'll see what that left guard spot. I think it may be much like they did Eric at left tackle a year ago, where they rotated some guys in there. J.J. Crawford would go until he kind of got tired, and it would be Mincy, or it would be Mincy, and then when he needed a break, they would go J.J. Crawford. They just platooned that. I think you could see them definitely platooning at the left guard spot. I don't know that you're going to see a guy just anchor in and be the left guard. I am with Austin. I've said it for a month. That's a bigger question mark to me than right tackle. I don't think any of us are surprised Gerald Mincy's getting more work at right tackle after this first scrimmage. I think we probably all saw that was likely going to happen. And so we'll see. I know this. We talked about Jacob Warren with the tight end group. I think Tennessee's pretty fortunate that Ollie Lane decided to use his COVID year and come back. Because where would they be at the center spot if he wasn't on this roster right now? Not that they're great there, but the fact that he can handle that position relatively short order. I mean, he's only worked there a week or so, and he's already running with the ones. So that they're fortunate he decided to come back for another year, because that was not his plan in early November.
Brent, you and I were talking coming off the practice field, I guess Sunday morning. Tennessee's leaving no stone unturned. They're trying to figure some things out. They're trying to, look at this combination, look at this player here. Could there be a situation where you have one of those tackles could slide inside? The popular name right now is Dane Davis. He was seen at practice over the weekend, snapping the football a little bit. I personally don't think Dane Davis is going to be the center in this offense, but they're just giving him a look there. I think Dane Davis could get a look at guard as well, just to try everything to make sure that they're seeing all possibilities, obviously, before you get into game week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you do. I mean, you take your veterans and you cross train, because you're working what if scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. And what if Austin is in game one? What if Ollie Lane goes out, rolls his ankle, or he loses his helmet or something like that? Who's going to be your next center? Is it Addison Nichols, or is he clearly so much more comfortable at left guard you don't feel like you can play him at center? I think you're at the point where you're starting to work every contingency plan, not because you're desperate. It's not desperation necessarily, but it's just for what you were talking about earlier. What happens if you have a couple of injuries? How does this look? Who could be the possibility to float around? Because some of those guys can't play three positions on the offensive line. Some guys are kind of locked in, and that's it. So I think that's kind of normal things that you do with some veteran players. I don't, we'll see if Dane Davis slides inside at guard. I don't know that that's the direction they're going to go. I've floated that out there as I just wondered. But we'll see what it looks like in this scrimmage and see what it looks like coming out.
Well, for me, I mean, I personally wonder deep down, does an Addison Nichols, who knows, as long as Cooper's healthy, he's never really going to play center. Where's he at mentally, in practice? I mean, Josh Dobbs, and I know they're two different positions, right? But Josh Dobbs was never a great practice player. Part of that was because they had the no contact jersey on him and he couldn't be himself. But I think some kids just kind of go through the motions. I mean, I don't like to hit range balls. I'd rather just go play 9 holes. Like, I don't care about sitting out there and hitting to a target, over and over and over again. I'd rather, kind of go out and see what happens on a regular golf course. How much does that, play into effect with some of these players? Do they love practice, or do they go, I'd rather just get to a game? And then all of a sudden the game lights come on and they are, a little more engaged, and they play a little bit better. Who knows? I do think that's a possibility. I mean, I know the former head coach didn't believe in that, didn't believe how you practice is how you played, but there are some kids that just don't like practice, and they would much rather just get to a game. And I think that's possible with one or two of these guys. Who knows if that's the case? Time will tell. Time will tell when we get to a game.
Kind of using that as a transition, let's go to the defensive backfield. Brandon Turnage, I think we all can agree, is not the best practice player, but when he gets in the game, he makes some plays. Now, again, he's like all the rest of them, got to stay healthy, got to stay consistent. But he was kind of a gamer a little bit last year when given the opportunity. He's off to a good start in fall camp. Looking at that secondary, Grants, Kamal Haddon, Danico Slaughter, they're cornerbacks. Obviously, some other guys are pushing them. There's been some injuries with Wesley Walker and Tamari McDonald, allowing a look at Warren Burrell, Gabe Judy Lawley at the star, Jalen McCullough, Wesley Walker, Andre Turrentine at safety. There's been some different combinations back there, but we're kind of getting a little bit better of an idea where Tennessee's secondary stands now midway through.
Who was it that had the good spring? Kamal Haddon? Is
Yeah.
that right? Kamal had a good spring. Brandon Turnage had a good fall camp to date. I think that's two good pieces you got right there. At least you feel good about after seeing a little bit on the practice field. I think Danico Slaughter, what we've seen from him, kind of his history and kind of what we know about him, that's three pieces we feel good about. I think it's what me and Hubs talked about when we did those position previews during the summer. You have a bunch of pieces and you've got more bodies back there. It's about finding your best 4, your best 5. And I don't know, Hubs, how close they are to finding their best 4 or their best 5, but at least they have some options in that search, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go into game one and Gabe Judy Lawley is a rotational guy at corner and is not one of your starters, you've had a good fall.
Yeah.
That means Kamal Haddon has stayed Austin locked in. He's stayed focused. He's playing up to his talent level. We knew Danico Slaughter had talent. I'm not saying Gabe Judy Lawley is an all-world player, but that's a guy who's played a lot of football. And if he's just going to be a rotational piece at corner, then your corners have had a good fall. And you've got a ton of competition at that position, unlike what you've had in previous years where you gave out starting jobs when you handed out numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, again, the thing about Gabe, not sure he does anything great. He does nothing poor though. Everything he does well. And, I mean, it's just a football player, just makes plays. Kamal's got talent when focused. Danico obviously, I think is kind of in that, I've said this before, like that Alante Taylor role, that physical corner that doesn't care to come downhill and lay the smack, because he's played that safety spot at a high level. So he brings that physicality to the position. They've got several corners. I mean, honestly, when you look at this team, like they have more defensive backs, safeties, and corners than they do anything. I mean, it's heavy in the back end, and so I'm with Hubs. Like if Gabe is not in the starting lineup, then that means you've probably had a pretty good fall camp and feel good about where you're at the corner spot. I still question about where they are at safety and where they are at star. See if T Mac can get healthy, and then Wesley Walker as well.
I was going to say this. Sorry to cut you off, Brandon. I was going to say this before we move to LBs. Kind of on that safety star combination, Tamari McDonald's been sidelined a little bit. We don't have the answer to this right now, but say he does get healthy. Is Tennessee pushing to an opportunity to where if you're healthy, hey, go over there and let's play some safety. Let's see what Warren Burrell and Gabe Giulali, if they can iron down this star position. I know they've kind of been doing that so far, but if you're a coach, you'd love to be in that situation to where you could maybe get a different look and see if T-Mac can play safety.
Yeah, the problem with that is I think fall camp's too far gone. I mean, if T-Mac had been healthy throughout fall camp, maybe. But now, I mean, you're talking about getting into, less than 3 weeks from playing a game. You got to get him. You got to get him back in and ready to go at the star position. I don't know that you're experimenting with that with 10 days to go before you play a game or 2 weeks to go. I'm not sure that that's a possibility. One guy who I think has had a solid fall that I was kind of written off, that not as bad as I wrote off Kamal Hadden in the spring before spring practice started, because I didn't think he'd be on this team, Austin Price. I think Andre Turrentine is a guy who is finding his footing a little bit. I think it was not great for him a year ago. I think the transition, and I don't know that it went extremely well for him. But with the absence of Wesley Walker, he is a guy you're talking about, who likes to practice. I mean, he's getting some valuable scrimmage reps with the ones and the twos, which he was not getting a year ago. And I think it's kind of woke him up a little bit. Does he play a lot? Is he in a rotation? I don't know, but I think he has made a better account of himself this fall than he has at any point in time since he's been at Tennessee.
Yeah, I think it's amazing once you kind of block out a lot of the outside noise, and just kind of focus. And again, I go back to what I was talking about, the offensive line. I think Turrentine knew he wasn't going to play a whole lot last year. It's easy to kind of go through the motions. I think he feels like he's got a shot to play this year, more focused, and we see a more what's the word Heupel loves to use? He says it all the time. He said it on the nation like 3 or 4 times. It's like deliberate, but it's not deliberate. Either way, they're focused is the best way to put Andre Turrentine. He has been intentional. There you go.
Yeah.
He's been intentional with his prepreration.
Well, and here's something. Go ahead, Grant. I'm sorry.
I was about to go back to Butch and say consistency and performance.
The thing too about the secondary, we've not seen this from them under Tim Banks because they haven't had the bodies. Do they become a team on third and long situations that play a 6 defensive back package, a comfortable 6 defensive back package, because they've got enough bodies there? How much more schematically can they be different in terms of disguise and doing different things in third and long situations, which is an area, Grant, this team has to improve defensively from a year ago. They did a better job of getting off the field on third down. They still gave up too many 3rd and 8 pluses. Can they be more creative because they have more bodies back there schematically to make them a better 3rd and long football team?
I mean, you would hope so. You would hope that if you have this advantage of having more bodies and having more depth and competitive depth, that you can put a better product on the field. I think that's the case with the front 7 at large. That this like the questions I have about the offensive line, I'm sure we're getting ready to talk about linebackers and defensive line and all that. Like the offensive line, in my opinion, can take a step back if this front 7 and this defense, the secondary, can get off the field more and can get more stops. I mean, if you can be a little bit more productive defensively, you don't have to score 46.1 points a game and lead the nation in scoring and be everything they've been the last couple of years on the offensive side of the football. So you would think more bodies, more possibilities, more creativity. We haven't seen that in 2 years with this defense because they haven't had those bodies and they haven't had that chance. But you would think with that chance now existing that they could take advantage of it and get off the field a little bit more.
3rd and long. Go quarters, take those LBs off the field, throw some more DBs in there, get to work and improve that 3rd and long because that was not very good last year. Linebackers, Austin Price, you've written about it. I think we've all written about it at some point in time. Deeper, more skilled. You feel better about that room right now if you're Brian Jean-Marie than you have the entire time you've been here at Tennessee. 2 veterans at the top, a lot of young talent behind. I think that's going to be a real impact position for Tennessee's defense that's trying to take a step forward this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're just deeper. I mean, that's the key phrase. They're more talented. I think I would call the room less volatile. I mean,
you don't say.
It's just a more I think cohesive unit. With the young guys, the older guys. I think Keenan Peely has been an outstanding addition. You heard the head coach on The Nation Sunday night rave about how much, I guess, more athletic that he is than they thought he was coming in. They knew he would be a good, steady, senior type voice to the room, but all of a sudden he is, flashing big time. He flashed big time in that Thursday scrimmage and showed an incredible amount of athleticism as they kind of turned him loose. I've compared him to Acuna just because that's the most recent ACL thing in my mind. But I mean, again, he's in year 2 off the ACL surgery, kind of like Ronald Acuna is. Is he back to feeling like he was before the ACL? It takes a while to get over those. And if that's the case, he and Aaron Beasley continuing to develop, and some of those young guys. I mean, BJ is the happiest guy on campus, and the biggest thing is BJ can rotate and feel okay about it. Like last year when he would rotate, I mean, I think he was probably like over there, like peeking through.
Well, you had to play a true freshman last year when you did that, and no offense to Elijah Herring, he probably just wasn't ready, But I mean, you felt good about Beasley, but now you can rotate, and you probably feel good about him.
Yeah, so I just think it's just a more cohesive unit, a more explosive unit. Again, you can't wipe away what Jeremy Banks did on the field. That guy against Alabama, that guy against a lot of teams, he was awesome. I mean, he had a great year last year, but, on the whole, they just were a unit that was still, a step or 2 away. I think they finally got there.
Nobody's sleeping better at night than Brian Jean-Marie right now. He is sleeping sound each and every night because A, he's got room and depth, and B, he's not worried about his phone ringing. So he is sleeping well, and he has a group of guys that he can really go with and develop from. And I think Peely has been the surprise transfer of all the transfers to this point. Now we're getting ready to talk about Omar Norman a lot. I think he's made plays, but I think when you talk, we asked this question on the podcast last week about who's the biggest impact transfer guy. It may end up being Keenan Peely when it's all said and done because he was that good in the scrimmage. We'll see if he backs it up, but he was that good in the scrimmage on Thursday.
And who picked that player, Hubs? Go ahead and give yourself a
toot. I didn't pick him at first. I came back to it later, but I didn't know he was going to do that. I mean, everybody I talked to when you talk to
people about doing it in a game.
Yeah, I mean, but everybody you talked to coming out of the scrimmage, all right, who stood out to you, whatever. It was very quickly somebody got to Keenan Peely. Like, we didn't know he was going to make that. We would know he was going to be able to do some of those things that he did.
First guy off the bench, AP, is it going to be Elijah Herring or Aaron Carter?
I think it'll be Elijah. Well, it depends. It depends on who has to come off the field.
And I think it depends on situational as well. Elijah Herring played a lot of 3rd downs last year.
Yeah.
So, all right, defensive line. Let's group this all together. I know it's a big group. It's like when you watch Rodney Garner go through individual the bag drills, it's a line of like 40 guys. It's like, why not split it up? Let's do it all together here. Omar Norman, lots an impact player. Tyler Barron, Elijah Herring, Elijah Simmons have got some praise from Rodney Gardner last week. You still have Amari Thomas down there. You have Carl Gar. You have a lot of returning options. Sophomores looking to stand up, and then you have the pass rushing, the Leos. A lot of potential there. Grant Ramey with Roman Harrison, then the 3 long explosive options as a collection, as a group. You feel like, again, this could be one of the deeper, more experienced, one of the better units for a defense that's going to take a step.
But we're going to have to see it happen, right? I mean, go back and look at that picture that Tennessee put out after the scrimmage of, who was it, Joshua Joseph getting off the bus. I mean, he looks like $1 million. He looks like a guy that's going to get after a quarterback, but, we're going to have to see it to believe it because, I mean, we talked to Rodney Garner last week. What did he say? We lost a lot of production when Byron Young left, when Byron Young played his last game at Tennessee, and Bumpus too. And who replaces those guys? And that's a great thing about talking to or listening to Rodney Garner talk in press conferences. He's going to be candid. He's going to give you, he's not just going to tell you stuff to make you feel good. He's going to tell you the truth and what he thinks about his position group. I think that's the biggest question is, they have some options there, and you like a lot of those names, but who is that guy that gets after them, or who are those guys that gets after the quarterback consistently, and how productive can they be getting after quarterbacks?
Hold on a second. Yeah. Eric wishes you would separate the D line from the D-backs.
He's like, who the hell's there?
I think that there is much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You may tell you what he said. I'm sorry, Megan can't beep that part out.
This is going to be a fun group to watch. To me, this may be linebackers, the youth of the linebackers development, and then watching some of these young guys and see how Rodney Garner works these guys into a rotation or into playing time. I think it's going to be one of the better things to watch with this football team. We've talked about Pierce and Joseph, the whole time. We'll see. But what is a guy like Weathersby? Where is he? Nobody's talked about Tyree West. Where is he going to be at right now? I don't know. Omar Norman Lott's made his place. He's got a lot of people and a lot of bodies there. And he really likes Austin, those young guys that he has from a potential standpoint. How quick does that get accelerated through the season? How much does he try to force some of those guys out there? I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. They're definitely more athletic across the board. They have a better understanding of what they want to do scheme wise, and we'll see. They're going to be able to play anywhere from 12 to 15 guys on the defensive line if they want to. They could be as deep as anybody in the country when it's all said and done.
And the good thing about the defensive line, too, is depending on situational football, you will see different packages out there. You will see different groups out there. Points in times last year, there were a couple different Leos on the field at the same time. In third and long, you could have Roman Harrison out there, James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, and Tyler Barron. That could be your defensive line potentially. Rabbit's package. Tyree West was in there last year. That's a good thing about football, package, and situational football. You can play a whole lot of different guys. So there's a lot of options, Austin, and a lot of guys that Rodney's been impressed with so far. But as he will be the first to remind you, got to keep going. Got to keep going because you're not where you need to be, and you never will.
No, 100%. He's going to continue to push guys left and right. It doesn't matter how much success they have. He is going to not let them get out ahead of themselves, get out over their skis, and feel too good about themselves. Even if he feels good about them, even if he is like a proud papa, and he does not want them to rest because he wants to continue to push to see how far he can develop them in a short amount of time.
Well, and with that group, you better not take a day off anyway because you're going to get the wrath of Rodney, right, Grant? But at the same time, too, you better not take a day off right now because somebody may take your snaps that week if you're not careful. You better not take many days off. And I think for the first time, Rodney can really sell that message. You miss a couple days of practice, you may be running third team when you come back to the practice field because guys are working ahead of you. He's got that kind of ability right now to use that competition as the biggest calling card.
What you're saying is Elijah Simmons shouldn't have too many number 51 days. Yeah. He needs to be stacking up number 10 days, right?
Yep. And you better fight through. Are you hurt or are you injured? Because if you're a little bit banged up and hurt, you might want to fight through that versus being injured. And I think that's a message that's out there as well.
Listen, we got to go, and I'm doing this on the fly, and so Megan's probably going to be cussing me. But Megan, can you go back to that picture of them coming through the tunnel? Joe Milton's leading them. It was from the scrimmage the other day. You flashed it up there a moment ago. Grant, you want to talk about the getting off the bus picture and how intimidating this could be? When we see it in a moment, it's Joe Milton, and then it's Elijah Simmons over his right shoulder, and it's like that is the most intimidating getting off the bus picture. Right now. That should put fear into a lot of opponents seeing that picture right there.
That number 10 practice jersey is doing a lot of work stretched over Elijah Simmons. That's like that button that can't hardly. It's doing everything it can to keep that shirt button. That number 10, man, that thing is stretched to the limits.
Look at that thing right there. You got Joe leading the team. Elijah Simmons. If you're watching on YouTube, Elijah Simmons is right there to our right.
Well, I mean, the bottom line with this team as we wrap it up is they are a better looking football team. Now, you can do this every year, and the answer for a lot of places and a lot of positions is going to be, well, they've got to prove it. You know, they got to go out on game day and prove it. The same thing's being said right now at Ohio State about the quarterback position, right? Same thing's being said around the country in a lot of places. The bottom line with this team, when you cover them every day, Grant, you pick all the scabs, right? I mean, you shred guys. I mean, you find every wart you can find. The one wart you can't find with this team is they're not little. They don't look undersized. They don't look like they don't belong. They look more physical. They look the part more than they've looked in quite some time at Tennessee. And that in itself is an encouragement for every Tennessee fan out there as they get ready to start this season.
I mean, they got a quarterback that's listed at 235, and I think that's down 10 pounds from what he was listed at last year. And they've got if we talked linebackers, I don't think anybody mentioned Aaron Carter. I mean, you walk on the practice field, he looks like, if you didn't know who you're looking at or you weren't familiar with the roster or whatever, I mean, you think you're looking at a junior or something, like just the way he looks the part. I mean, it's those guys all over the field, but at the same time, we're going to see 20 minutes of it for however many more days we're going to see 20 minutes of it, and then we'll see what they look like on the field against Virginia. About 3 or 4 minutes. Enjoy it while it lasts, boys.
All right, and that 235 is still not the biggest quarterback in the SEC, which is just hard to believe. That's going to do it here for this edition of the Volquest Podcast. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and joining us here today. For Austin Price, Grant Ramey, Brent Hubbs, I'm Eric Kane. A big thank you, as always, to our friends Exterior Home Solutions. Please, for a free estimate, if you have a need, an upgrade, some repair work, whatever the case may be, they are the solution for you. 865-524-5888 for a free estimate, or visit them online, exteriorhomesolutions.com. Like this video, subscribe to the Volquest YouTube channel. Let's get this video in front of more and more Tennessee fans. We'll be back on Thursday for the mailbag edition of the show. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody.